Christine, how much does it hurt the WNBA when Caitlin Clark is out?
It is devastating to the WNBA when Caitlin Clark is out.
The WNBA had one job: protect Caitlin Clark. They failed. And now the entire league is paying the price. With Clark injured and on the sidelines, viewership has plummeted by a staggering 55%. Ticket prices have crashed, and the bright future the league was promised just a few months ago is crumbling into dust. This wasn't just bad luck. It was a crisis the league created itself by allowing its most valuable asset to be treated like a human target. The shocking fallout is now revealing an uncomfortable truth. The WNBA isn't a league of stars, it's a one-woman show, and the show might be over for good.
A lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire WNBA to be down. And this tweet from Christine Brennan really stuck out to me. She said one player gets injured and more than half the TV audience for the entire league disappears. Has any other athlete ever had that kind of impact on a sport? Golf without Tiger definitely dropped precipitously on occasion, but
before Caitlin Clark, the WNBA existed in a quiet corner of the sports world, sustained by a small but loyal fan base. After her arrival, it erupted into a mainstream cultural phenomenon. The Clark effect wasn't just a catchy media buzzword, it was a tangible economic tidal wave. Arenas that once echoed with empty seats were suddenly sold-out spectacles, with fans lined up for blocks. Games had to be relocated to massive NBA venues, not out of optimism, but out of pure necessity to handle the unprecedented demand.
And the truth is the truth, and the data is there. And what we saw when Caitlin was out the last time, the 5 games that she missed earlier in the season, the WNBA's viewership dropped more than 50%. Not just the Fever, but the entire league.
Ticket prices, once an afterthought, began to fetch hundreds, even thousands on secondary markets. For the first time in its history, the WNBA wasn't just in the sports section. It was headline news, consistently smashing viewership records that had stood for decades. Clark wasn't just a promising rookie, she was a one-woman stimulus package, breathing life, relevance, and millions upon millions of dollars into a league that desperately craved all three. But beneath the surface of this fairy tale success, a dark and destructive undercurrent was already beginning to form.
Quad injury jumped to her groin likely because of compensation. But the thing that you have to be careful of is if, say, you try to rush her back from this injury as well, then you're getting into this territory where a very serious injury can happen. That is what the Indiana Fever, that is what Caitlin need to avoid the best that they possibly can. So if it means that Caitlin is out for 3 weeks, if it means that she is out all the way through All-Star, then so be it.
Almost immediately, a disturbing and undeniable pattern emerged. Clark became the designated target for a level of physicality that went far beyond the bounds of tough competition or typical rookie hazing. It was relentless, calculated, and often reckless. Opponents seemed more invested in sending a message than in playing legitimate defense. Blatant hip checks, blindside hits away from the ball, and aggressive shoves long after the whistle became a regular feature of every Indiana Fever game.
Clark went down. The WNBA ratings have dropped over 55%.
Yikes.
Across the board.
Hey, guess what, guys?
The league is Caitlin Clark.
The league is Caitlin Clark. She is the WNBA, guys.
Sidelined with a left quad strain May 24th. National TV viewership has plunged since then 55%. Before the injury, the Fever, her team, were averaging 1.81 million viewers, almost 2 million. Since her injury, fewer than 850,000.
While some league insiders and commentators tried to dismiss it as a welcome to the league ritual, fans and impartial observers saw something far more sinister. They saw a league that was failing to control its players and, more alarmingly, failing to protect its single most valuable asset. Each cheap shot that went unpunished sent a clear and dangerous message across the league. The targeting of Caitlin Clark was not only allowed, but implicitly endorsed. It was a dangerous game of chicken, and it was only a matter of time before someone got seriously hurt.
News is alarming for the league, and it's alarming for the league because this is such a crucial year for the WNBA. At the end of this season, the WNBA will go into CBA negotiations. If negotiations go well, then every single player in the WNBA has a much better chance of making so much more in their next contract. And that's one thing when you start thinking about how many people stopped watching when Caitlin Clark got injured. A lot of people stopped watching because they are boycotting the WNBA. They don't want to give viewership to any other teams or any other players, whether they like other players on the team or not, because of how the media and the league itself has handled Caitlin Clark and how they have treated her fans.
The human body can only withstand so much punishment before it breaks. The relentless physical campaign against Clark inevitably led to a complete system failure. First, it was a left quad strain that forced her to miss crucial games. Then, a nagging groin injury surfaced, an ailment many experts believe was a direct result of her overcompensating for the first injury while trying to play through the pain. Her legendary shooting percentages, once a model of consistency, began to plummet as she visibly struggled on the court.
What's really concerning about this is the fact that we are only a month into the regular season, and Caitlin Clark has already been out with 2 injuries, with the first one being her having to miss some time with a left quad strain. Now, of course, this is concerning because if you're already on your second injury, you don't want to be that player that is always hurt. Cough, cough, Embiid, cough, cough, Anthony Davis. So I really do hope that the Fever really sits her out right now for a while, only because you don't want her to have more long-term injuries and be more prone to.
This wasn't a case of bad luck or a freak accident. It was the predictable, logical, and preventable outcome of a league that allowed its biggest star to be treated like a human piñata. The very disaster that critics had been warning about for weeks had finally come to pass. And with her forced to the sidelines, the world was about to see just how terrifyingly fragile the WNBA's new empire truly was.
Man, bruh. Congratulations to the WNBA. Your ratings are going to drop by 55 to 60% once again. I believe the WNBA have successfully broken Caitlin Clark.
The moment Caitlin Clark was no longer on the court, the empire she built began to disintegrate. The fallout was immediate, catastrophic, and brutally honest. Across the board, nationally televised WNBA viewership cratered by a staggering 55%. The Indiana Fever, once the hottest ticket in all of sports, saw their own viewership fall by 53%. But the numbers that truly expose the crisis are the ticket prices.
As big a deal as Tiger was in men's golf, Keith, he did, and when he was gone, it affected the ratings, but nothing like that. And, you know, Michael Jordan being out, maybe a 5 percentage points or something. Nothing like this. You can make a strong case, and I will make that case, and have that there is no one single athlete more important to his or her sport or tour or whatever the circuit is that they play on than Caitlin Clark is to the WNBA.
A highly anticipated rematch between the Fever and the Chicago Sky saw ticket prices crash by over 70%, plummeting from an average of $210 down to a paltry $95 without her name on the roster. Across all the games she missed, the average ticket price fell from a healthy $130 Saturn to a dismal $80. NBA arenas that had been booked to accommodate the Clark-driven demand suddenly felt cavernously empty. The data delivered a cold, hard verdict. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA wasn't just less popular, it was a product in a state of complete financial freefall. But the financial bleeding was only half the story. The real lasting damage was being done to the league's reputation.
I don't even know where to begin, man. I hope Caitlin Clark is okay. I want to know when this injury even happened, bro, because let's be serious here. She has the quad injury. Mind you, Caitlin Clark hadn't missed a game since she was like 19 years old, since she was like 18 in college or something. Now she has a groin injury. We've never seen Caitlin Clark play as bad as she played the last 3 games. Let's just be serious here. She's like 1 for 20 something on threes in the last 3. We've never seen her shoot the ball this way. I'll say that. Has she been hurt and playing through this?
As the numbers collapsed, the league's response shifted from passive to baffling. Instead of acknowledging the crisis and vowing to better protect its stars, the WNBA and some of its veteran players doubled down, repeating the tired excuse that it was all just competitive basketball. This outright denial in the face of overwhelming evidence created a secondary crisis, a crisis of credibility. Fans were enraged.
Thing I admire about Caitlin, she's a warrior. She's tough. You hear me? Bruh, you just don't see players, you don't see female basketball players like her. I'm sorry. I done seen a lot of female basketball players, like I said.
They felt their intelligence was being insulted and that the league they were just starting to pour their time and money into was fundamentally broken and dishonest. A boycott movement gained serious traction, with thousands of new fans declaring they wouldn't watch any WNBA games, with or without Clark, until the league took player safety seriously. The league's stubborn inaction had turned its biggest asset into its biggest controversy, actively alienating the very audience that held the key to its survival and future growth.
To clean up, I believe the physicality and all this hacking and fouling that goes on. She getting blindsided by Marina Mabry. I think all of this stuff is having a wear and tear and an impact. And all you guys are doing are hurting yourselves, because the numbers are going to drop and drop and drop. And trust me, when it's time for that collective bargaining agreement, they are going to point to this and say, well, how can we give you guys all this money? What happens if she gets hurt?
The timing of this self-inflicted wound couldn't possibly be worse, and it reveals what might be a billion-dollar mistake. The WNBA is on the verge of negotiating a new generation-defining media rights deal. That deal was supposed to be built on the unshakable foundation of the Clark effect and the massive record-setting ratings she delivered. Now, network executives will be looking at a league whose value is dangerously volatile and entirely dependent on the health of one single player.
Every day, because of the way they play the game, because I love the WNBA. I love the way they play the game. But we really watch it because Caitlin Clark and everybody watching. Now listen, if I keep bumping her, knocking her down, might get her a concussion, you might hurt her for real. For 2 weeks, she was done with like a hamstring. She was down. 55% of the viewership was down. She comes back the next game, it's about 3 million viewers. Now let me tell you something. Growing up in the hood, they teach you this. Always protect the money. Y'all keep hurting her and all that. She's going for a year or two. Ain't nobody gonna watch it. If nobody watches, how y'all gonna make and generate money?
They will point to the 55% ratings drop and ask the brutal question, why should we pay a premium for a product that completely collapses the second one person gets hurt? The very players who engaged in the reckless fouls and the league that enabled them may have committed an act of mass self-sabotage, costing themselves and every other player in the league hundreds of millions in future salaries.
What I saw walk into the game is what the media don't see. Thousands of kids.
Wearing what, Gil?
Kids. Huh?
What were they
Caitlin
wearing?
Clark jerseys.
Were they Fever jerseys? Were they Iowa jerseys? Were they
wherever she played? It was whatever she played.
And that's what was more impressive to me.
It did that. It wasn't just it was Caitlin in the back.
For her style of play.
But her style of play. But it wasn't adults. Right. It was parents bringing their kids and their friends. Them seats was kids filled.
Right.
And that's what they don't understand. They don't grasp that part of it.
To truly grasp the magnitude of this situation, you have to place it in historical context. When Tiger Woods was injured, golf ratings dropped, but they didn't get cut in half. When Michael Jordan retired, the NBA took a hit, but the league itself was never in question. Those leagues were established multi-billion-dollar giants. The WNBA was not. Caitlin Clark was tasked with a burden no modern athlete has ever faced. She wasn't just asked to be a star, but to single-handedly build an entire league's relevance in real time. She handled this immense pressure with remarkable grace and humility, constantly deflecting praise and promoting her teammates in the league. The WNBA could have built a dynasty around her. Instead, they allowed short-sighted jealousy and internal politics to fester, creating a toxic environment that now threatens to undo every bit of progress she inspired. It's a tragic story of what could have been. While the league office fumbled its response, the root of the problem was festering in plain sight, in the locker rooms and on the court. The aggression toward Clark wasn't just random, it was fueled by a thinly veiled resentment from a faction of veteran players who felt their territory was being invaded. Public comments downplaying her talent, coded language about her not having to earn it, and a general air of dismissal created a toxic atmosphere. This became a classic story of the old guard versus the new phenom. They saw her unprecedented media attention and endorsement deals not as a rising tide lifting all boats, but as a personal slight. This internal division is precisely why the league couldn't get a handle on the situation. How can you enforce rules to protect a player when some of the most influential voices in the league are the ones justifying the hard fouls? It exposed a deep-seated cultural rot, proving the biggest threat to the WNBA's growth wasn't an external competitor, but the enemy within. In today's hyper-connected world, controlling the narrative is just as important as winning the game, and the WNBA failed on all fronts. The league's handling of the Clark situation evolved into a full-blown public relations nightmare. Every cheap shot, every controversial no-call was instantly clipped, dissected, and debated by millions on social media, with the league perpetually 2 steps behind. Their official statements were slow, corporate, and completely tone-deaf, satisfying no one and fueling even more outrage. Meanwhile, fan-made compilation videos showcasing the pattern of physical targeting were going viral, becoming more powerful and persuasive than any press release the league could muster. They completely lost control of their own story. The WNBA was no longer being defined by its athletes' talent, but by its own perceived incompetence and weakness. This catastrophic failure to manage public perception has done irreparable damage to their brand, eroding trust not just with fans, but with the corporate sponsors and media partners they so desperately need. This is a cautionary tale of a golden opportunity being squandered by denial, incompetence, and jealousy. The WNBA was handed a winning lottery ticket, and through a series of baffling decisions, they seem determined to set it on fire. The viewership collapse and the financial devastation are merely symptoms of a much deeper rot within the league's culture, a culture that seems to resent the very star who gave it a chance at mainstream success. The clearest evidence of Caitlin Clark's value isn't found in the record-breaking numbers she posted, but in the deafening silence and the vast empty arenas she left behind. The question is no longer if the league has a problem, but whether it is even capable of fixing it. Will they finally learn to protect their golden goose? Or will they be forever remembered as the league that broke the one player who could have saved them? Based on everything we've seen so far, the future looks terrifyingly uncertain.